The air horn was getting a lot of love from the kids in Frontline School today, so I think we'll keep it in.
Start taking notes.
Stay home, call relatives, do home learning. Link to the Do Now quiz is on ePraise or in the description. Pause here and get it done. Answers already on there. So I just want to do a bit of feedback, again linked to hydrographs. Certain key features we need to be able to identify. The point at which the rainfall is at its highest is the peak rainfall. The point at which the discharge, the amount of water in the river as shown by the line part of the hydrograph, is the peak discharge, the point where the river water is at its highest level. If the discharge increases with a very steep rising limb, then it's likely that we've got steep slopes, a built-up area, impermeable rocks. If the discharge increases on a much more gentle rising limb, it's likely that we've got lots of vegetation, permeable rocks, permeable soils, and therefore much lower overall levels of discharge. And before we move on to look at soft engineering today, we're going to have a quick recap on the hard engineering strategies we discussed last week. So we looked at 5 hard engineering strategies. We looked at dams and reservoirs, which hold back the water behind the dam, therefore controlling flooding. We looked at dredging, which increases the capacity of the river's channel, therefore making it less likely to overflow. We looked at river straightening, which straightens the channel and cuts off meanders, meaning that water flows downstream much quicker, making it less likely to flood in the area which has been straightened, although flooding will be increased further downstream. We looked at embankments, which again increase river capacity and make it less likely to overflow and flood. And we looked at flood relief channels, which channel floodwater away from high value built up areas and move it downstream more quickly, although again, they increase flood risk downstream. So we're now going to move on and we're going to look at managing flooding, but this time via soft engineering. As we've seen previously, hard engineering are man-made structures built to control the flow of rivers and to reduce flooding. Soft engineering is management that tries to work with the natural river system to reduce flood risk. Soft engineering does not involve large-scale building work to control the river. It involves working with the natural river system. The first strategy we're going to look at is afforestation, the planting of trees within the drainage basin to increase interception and therefore reduce the amount of surface runoff and therefore reduce flood risk. This slows down the flow of water through the system, making flooding less likely, as well as providing habitats for animals and improving the appearance of the area. However, there are weaknesses to afforestation in that you can plant trees, but it takes time for trees to grow in order to become fully effective. The second strategy we're going to talk about is floodplain zoning. This involves studying the area around a river, the floodplain, after it's flooded, and looking at areas where flooding is very likely and where water levels are going to get very high, and areas where flooding is less likely and water levels aren't going to get very high. At this point, we then allow certain land uses in those high-risk areas where there's not going to be a huge amount of damage. You might allow sports pitches or car parks in areas that are likely to flood, but you wouldn't allow people to build their homes. You therefore zone the floodplain according to where flood risk is highest. This is great because it reduces the amount of damage that's being caused, but doesn't actually do anything to stop the flood itself. Next, We have flood warnings. This involves using the lag time, the gap between peak rainfall and peak discharge, to give people warning that a flood is likely, enabling them to evacuate, enabling them to protect their property. Again, this reduces the amount of damage that flooding causes, but again, this does not stop the flood itself. Finally, this image represents river restoration, restoring the natural vegetation found in rivers, restoring the natural route that rivers take, restoring meanders that have been removed for river straightening. By doing this, you slow down the flow of the river. By doing this, you enable the surrounding area to absorb and to hold more water due to that increase in vegetation. And consequently, you reduce the risk of large-scale flooding. It does mean that flooding is more likely in the area that's been restored, but overall, across the entire river system, the likelihood of extremely significant flooding is significantly reduced. So, pause here, copy down this diagram and attempt to add that detail into your notes. It may be that you need to go back through and to re-watch those sections of the videos a couple of times. That's absolutely fine. And there'll be green pen notes in a few seconds that you can then compare to what you've written. And there are the 5 strategies. It could be that you've got additional detail beyond this, that's absolutely fine, but this is a good level of detail to aim for. Pause here, double check, green pen, improve those notes yourself, make sure that you've got good quality notes on those soft engineering strategies. So, homework answers are on ePraise. Go back through, mark, correct, and then you've got that body of questions and answers that we can use for revision subsequently.